Good morning and thank you for joining the Heavy Vehicle Safety Initiative webinar. My name's Leanne Gill. I'm the Grant Support Officer in the HVSI team, and I'll be taking you through the presentation this morning. We're also joined by Janelle Kennelly, who's our Senior Grants Officer, and she manages the HVSI program, and John Gilbert, who's the Manager of Industry Engagement and Customer Experience. Both of these will be available to answer questions as well. Firstly, just a few housekeeping notes before we start. The session is being recorded for those who couldn't make it today. Can you please keep your microphone muted when not in use? The first part of the session, I'll be discussing the HVSI program and how to apply for a grant. I'll be talking about sections on the application form, so if you have a copy handy, you can look through it as we go. There will be times through the presentation where I'll stop for questions about the information that's just been presented. During this time, use the hand raise function in Teams. You can find this at the top of your screen under Reactions. Put your hand up and we can get to you, or alternatively, type your question into the chat. There'll also be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. Firstly, what is the HVSI program? The Heavy Vehicle Safety Initiative program is a merit-based grants program administered by NHVR on behalf of the Australian Government and focuses on safety in the growing transport and logistics area. The program is funded by the Australian Government and was launched in 2016. To date, the program has invested in over 130 industry-led projects aimed at improving heavy vehicle safety. A full list of all projects that have been funded is available on the HVSI page on the NHVR website. The aim of the HVSI program is to invest in projects that will deliver tangible outcomes for safer drivers, safer vehicles, and safer road use nationally. So, who can apply for a grant? The HVSI is an open application process. All participants and stakeholders in the Australian heavy vehicle industry are encouraged to apply. We encourage submissions from councils, small, medium and large businesses, owner-operators, peak bodies and associations that are registered with an ABN and hold the required insurances. And of course, submissions that are supported by a broad group of stakeholders are always encouraged. Once lodged, the applications for the HVSI go through a number of steps. Firstly, all applications are assessed against the eligibility criteria. They are also assessed against set criteria and their ability to meet the program objectives. The assessment criteria are detailed in the HVSI submission guidelines. All eligible projects are then assessed by the HVSI Grants Assessment Panel. This panel is made up of NHVR subject matter experts and representatives from the Office of Road Safety. Members on the panel are chosen on their experience and broad understanding of the heavy vehicle industry and its safety priorities. Once the panel have assessed the submissions and have come together to discuss each project in detail, project recommendations are provided to the Australian Government, who approve and announce the successful projects for each round. How do you apply? To apply for the HVSI funding, you will need the HVSI submission guidelines. In here, you'll find information about the HVSI submission processes, as well as detail of the assessment criteria. You'll also need the application form. You can download both the submission guidelines and the application form from the NHVR website. And of course, you need a project. Feel free to reach out to the HVSI team if you've got any questions about either of these documents, or if you wish to discuss your proposed project with us. Firstly, let's look at eligibility. There are two parts to this section: organisation and project. Applicants will need to be able to demonstrate that their organisation or business has the capacity and capability to deliver the proposed project. We want your projects to be successful, so being able to show the HVSI panel that projects can be delivered within the budget, timeframe, and resources allocated without impacting your business as usual is important. Organisations must hold at least 20 million public liability insurance, 5 million professional indemnity, and the required workers' compensation insurance for your state and organisation. Financials are required so the panel can make informed decisions about your project. So if the budget or timelines get blown out for whatever reason, your organisation will not suffer financially. We want HVSI projects to benefit industry and your organisation. Projects. An eligible project must be able to start in the 2023-24 financial year. It needs to align with the themes of safer drivers, safer vehicles, and safer road use, address an identified safety issue or gap which you have provided evidence for, and be supported by other stakeholders or industry peak bodies or associations. You will also need to ensure that the application form is fully completed, and we must receive it by 5 p.m. Brisbane time on the 20th of February this year. Don't forget that there is a full list of activities and costs that will not be funded listed in the HVSI submission guidelines. Does anyone have a question about the information so far? I'm not seeing any hands up. Thanks, Mel. At least I know someone can hear me. Okay. Awesome. Well, don't forget, you can always send an email, put it in chat, or there will be time throughout later in the presentation. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to talk you through sections on the application form. So if you've got a copy handy, you can follow through with me. Yes, you can get we'll get a copy of the presentation. We'll put it up on our website or email it to you. Okay, starting with evidence-based. This is one of the most important sections of the application form. Here is where you must provide evidence to the panel of the gap or safety issue, as well as how your project will address it. Provide insight into the project by sharing your passion about the project. Show how the project aligns with identified priorities and how it will improve safety in the heavy vehicle industry. Evidence can include your own organisation or association's experiences where you have identified a gap and you can provide documentation on. Another source of evidence you might use is crash data. Don't just concentrate on fatal crashes, include serious injury and property damage. Near-miss data is useful, however, often not readily available. Survey results is another source of data. The results from the Heavy Vehicle Safety Industry Survey, conducted by InSync on behalf of the NHVR, are available on the NHVR website. There is also the Heavy Vehicle Safety Strategy and the National Road Safety Strategy. Both of these documents outline identified areas for improvement in safety. I'm sure that there's a wealth of industry-specific information that you have access to, which will help to provide evidence of the gap or safety issue your project is aiming to address. Remember to include information about the data sources you have used in your analysis to identify the safety issue or gap. Consideration can also be given to projects that align with or build on existing initiatives, which the evidence base already exists. Scope and benefits. The panel will consider how the project aligns with heavy vehicle safety priorities identified by governments, the NHVR, and industry stakeholders. Here, you can outline the project's geographic location and spread. The panel will consider the project's location or locations and the potential stakeholder reach. Ensure you provide information to demonstrate how the project provides local safety benefits and its ability or potential to provide regional, cross-jurisdictional, or national benefits. If your project does not deliver national or cross-jurisdictional benefits, it should have the potential to be rolled out on a broader basis in the future. In this section, you can also include detail about your organisation's willingness to share the project outcomes at a broader level. Ensure you include how you will accomplish this. There is also a specific section in the application form where you can demonstrate the value of your project by outlining how the benefits of the project will continue beyond the end of the funding period. The next section is project objectives. It is important to be able to clearly articulate the objectives for your project. An example could be industry-wide increase in the knowledge of correct restraint use in the turf industry. This collaboration, the important bit. The panel will be looking to see that projects are supported by a number of stakeholders. Therefore, in this section, outline other groups, organisations, or people who will be involved in your project. Include detail about their role in the project. For example, are other organisations going to be involved on a project steering committee? Are they going to provide technical expertise or maybe in-kind support? Letters of support from external parties and other relevant industry organisations will need to be attached to your application. Letters that are specific and individual are highly regarded rather than a duplicated standard letter. Remember, submissions that are supported by a broad range of stakeholders are encouraged. You may wish to contact your relevant industry association or peak body to coordinate a submission under their auspices. This acknowledges the extensive work representative bodies have undertaken to build their existing knowledge bases around the issues facing the industry and the entire supply chain. Project management. This is the area where you need to provide details of how you are going to manage your project, including information about who will be involved and their key accountabilities in the delivery of the project. If your organisation does not have the capacity to deliver the project, you must be able to show how you're going to facilitate the delivery and/or partner with another organisation that has capacity. In this section, you are required to list the specific steps or activities that will be undertaken to complete the project. Be sure to only include those activities that will be undertaken during the funded project period. Applicants need to be able to demonstrate that significant groundwork and planning has been undertaken. Any required approvals or agreements, for example from landowners or road managers, should have been sought prior to submitting the application. This section of the application form helps to demonstrate that the project has progressed past the concept stage. The important thing to remember when developing your project plan is that the project must be able to commence in 2023-24 and be completed within 2 years of the commencement date. Successful applicants are announced later in 2023 and will enter into a funding agreement with the NHVR. Make sure you take these times into consideration when you're developing your activities and timeframes. Be sure to ensure your timeframe allows for the completion of all elements of your project and project communication activities. We ask for your plan to be well thought out as part of the submission stage, so your projects are already implementable and ready to go if you're successful in securing HVSI funding. Communication activities. In this section, you're required to list the specific steps that you'll take to promote the project and funding from the HVSI program. The purpose of these communication activities and when they will occur is also needed. Once again, only list those activities that will be undertaken during the funded project period. The submission guidelines provide some suggested activities that you may want to consider in your project communication activities, including media releases, media opportunities to mark the completion of a major milestone or project completion, or news industry-specific newsletter articles. For successful applicants, the NHBR works with you to refine your project communication plan, including approving media releases and publications. Risk. The panel recognises that risks arise in all projects. Therefore, they will look for evidence that you have considered risks and identified mitigation activities to enable successful implementation of your project. You can do this by developing a risk matrix. An example risk is the project running over budget, with a mitigation strategy to provide regular tracking of the expenditure against budget activities. Which leads us into budget. When assessing submissions, the panel will consider the size and adequacy of the project budget, as well as whether it can commence and conclude within the required timeframe. In this section, you are required to detail a project budget, which lists all income sources and expenditure directly related to your project. Be sure to refer to the submission guidelines for a detailed list of what will not be funded from the HPSI. Remember, all organisations are required to provide in-kind or cash contribution to the project. The panel will use this information from the section to consider whether the project represents value for money in the context of the total available funding pool, as well as how the project compares to other project applications received from the round. This brings me to the end of the formal presentation. I'll now open the session to any questions you have. Don't forget, we have both Janelle and John here to also answer questions. Can you please raise your hand icon in Teams, or alternatively type the question in the chat? We had a question in there, what kind of grant amount? The program is not capped for the amount of money. However, the panel will be looking for value for money projects.
Leanne, I'll answer that question from Lauren. So Lauren has asked, have we got any examples of fictitious projects that have not been funded and why? So we don't actually have a list of those on hand to talk you through, but it all comes down to competition on the day. So when you're writing these submissions, really consider that you're up against however many other submissions are there. So really it comes down to what is your benefits to your project to the industry, and what are those wider benefits, and is it a value for money project? So they're all the things that the panel looks for, and you can refer to the guidelines for the ineligible funded amounts and things that we will not fund under the program. And no, we don't provide feedback on unsuccessful projects unless the panel particularly wants us to be able to give detailed feedback to an applicant. You don't get specific feedback. Andrea, you've asked, would it be problematic to put forward a project with lots of moving parts, which require national and state funding? No, it's not problematic, but the panel would take that into consideration, whether the funding is secured or not. If it's not, you probably got less chance of getting funded. Realistically, we want to fund successful projects. So if we funded you and you didn't secure that funding, but the rest of the funding meant that your project couldn't go ahead, then the panel would look into all of that. But we don't want to set you up for failure. So if you are counting on additional funds to deliver your project, then it would be unlikely the panel would put you through for recommendation without that extra funding. Sorry, Leanne, over to you.
I'm happy for you to keep going there, Janelle, with
Okay.
the chats. Thank you.
Cody, is there a minimum percent for in-kind contribution? No, there's not. We just like to see that you are actually putting in some in-kind or your own money. In-kind is really important and it is really valuable. You can still put dollar amounts against that, and that's your time and effort, and that is your company's money when it comes to time and resourcing. So that's really important. But no, there isn't a cap amount that the panel looks for. Andrea, just back on that state funding. So if your letters of support from state governments are saying that they are committed to the funds, then yes, of course, that's completely fine. The panel would look into that. If they were just letters of support, though, and not actually necessarily saying that the money is there, then they would take that in consideration as well.
Melanie, you were asking a question about the project details section on the application form with the word limit. That the 2,000 word limit doesn't have a sections limit on it, so that's just across the whole. However, you want to be able to distribute that wording across it. If you want to add appendices or something to your application form, well, you're more than welcome as well if you've got further information that you'd like to submit about your project.
Mark, your question, no, there isn't really anything about the average grant amount. They're all very different. We're happy to have a chat to you about your project offline though, so feel free to reach out to us. Leanne, do you want to put up the contact details on your screen? So if anyone has any specific project questions that they want to ask us or to talk through, just pop us an email and we'll schedule in some time to get back to you. And we can answer any of these more detailed questions about your project.
Lisa, the number of submissions we've got annually has varied. We've gone up to about 75 submissions. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in the program. And Andrea, yes, you can go over the word count if you want to add further information about your project in an appendix.
You're on mute, Leanne.
It looks like that there's no more questions coming through. So thank you for attending the session today. To download the submission guidelines and application form, head to the HVSI page on the NHVR website. Of course, if you've got any further questions or would like to ask a specific project question, please contact the HVSI team on the email provided. We look forward to receiving your applications for round 8. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Leanne. Great presentation.